Welcome to Learning to Learn. My name is Ian Gibbs, and this is the place where we try to look at education and learning in all its shapes and forms. Today is Saturday, the 4th of April. It's now 3 weeks into homeschooling. We're still here in Barcelona suffering from the effects of the coronavirus, and my kids now have been off school for 3 weeks. So I can speak from experience about what it is that I'm talking about here. And what I'd like to do today is to focus on a skill which I've realized is extremely important as far as homeschooling goes. In fact, it's extremely important for pretty much every time that you have to interact with another human being. That skill I'm talking about is listening. When I say listening, I'm talking about effective listening, being a good listener, and how important being a good listener actually is. Because one of the things that we have in today's society is that a huge amount of importance is put on speaking. The importance of public speaking, the importance of debates, the idea of oral expression, all of this, we focus a lot on the art of rhetoric, the art of speaking. But we're at school, in our places of education, in schools, universities, whatever, almost none, if any, time is spent teaching people to become effective listeners. And you say, well, listening is easy, it's just listening, isn't it? And I'd like to argue that actually it's not. Effective listening is not just sitting and listening to somebody. I can say this because once you become aware of how important good listening is, you start to become aware that there are actually very few people who are effective listeners. And this is really important, I think, because if you can think of somebody that you know who is a very good listener, and think, how do you feel about that person? How do you feel when that person has spent time listening to what you say? And if you're anything like me, then when somebody takes the effort to listen to you speaking, to listen to your ideas, and to try to understand what it is that you're saying, then you feel great. It's an immensely satisfying and reassuring situation to experience when somebody takes the effort to listen to you. And so just yesterday, my 9-year-old daughter, we were trying to homeschool her, and she was having this problem with one of the projects that she had to do, and she was really getting quite upset about it. And she had a tantrum, burst into tears, ran upstairs to her room. And in a situation like this, it's perfectly normal, not sure, but I would say it's perfectly normal for the adult to go after that child and to start talking to them, trying to reason them into doing whatever it is that they had to do. And often what happens in these situations is that you just have confrontation, you have stress, it causes an argument, and it doesn't really get to anywhere. And so what I did was I sat down next to my daughter, and all I did was listen to her. You sit down and listen to what she was saying and let it all come out. It explains her frustration. She explains why it is that she can't, or why it is that she doesn't want to do what she's doing, the obstacles that she's experiencing. And after about 15 minutes of absorbing this, of patiently listening to what she was saying, then she calmed down. She managed to get all her negativity out. Because I wasn't trying to argue with her or talk to her, there wasn't any of this confrontation. She was able to lower her energy level, calm down. And eventually we got to the stage where I understood what her problems were. We managed to negotiate a strategy of where she could come back down the stairs, sit down at the table again, and continue with her studies, which was great. But too often I find that people quite simply don't bother to pay attention and listen to what the other person is saying. And so what I'd like to do today is basically, first of all, the key message from today's video is that listening is a really important thing that you can do, and that you could be doing it a little bit more. And by doing it a little bit more, you're going to be helping yourself and you're going to be helping other people. And so what do I mean by effective listening? What is effective listening? Well, succinctly, effective listening is to focus completely on what the other person is saying with the objective of trying to understand what that person is saying. Sometimes you get the situation where one person is listening to the other person, but all it is that they're waiting for the first person to shut up so that they can say what it is that they want to say. Or it's you're listening to the other person so that you can pick holes in their argument, prove why they are wrong, and why your idea or your point of view is right. Neither of these situations is actually effective listening. Effective listening is all about focusing on what that person is saying and trying to understand why they are saying it. So the first thing is that if you're going to be listening to somebody, you have to be with them 100%. You can't effectively listen to somebody while you're trying to do something else. You can't effectively listen while you're cooking the dinner, or while you're watching the television, or while you're listening to music. Effective listening, the first thing is to put any distraction down, turn any other noise off, to be with that person 100% and focus on them, to look them in the eye as much as is comfortably possible, and to pay attention to everything that they're saying as if it was something that was really, really important to you. The second thing is to make the effort to actually understand what they're saying. If there's something that you don't particularly understand, then ask questions that clarify what it is that they're trying to say. So questions like this could be, for instance, what specifically are you talking about? Could you give me an example of that? What is it that makes you feel that? These sort of questions are important to demonstrate that you're trying to understand the other person. But what you must also try to do at the same time is to avoid asking your questions that sound like they are challenging what the other person is saying. Or asking a question like, why on earth do you say that? That isn't so much seeking to understand. That gives the impression that you feel that whatever it is that the other person is saying is in some way wrong. And judging or accusing are, for instance, two things that you should definitely not be doing when you're trying to be an effective listener. Other things, for example, which are fairly obvious, but nevertheless a lot of people still do them, are things like interrupting. It's very common to listen to people having a conversation and they're you constantly interrupting or talking over the top of what the other person is saying. That's not effective listening. Changing the subject as well, hijacking the conversation. For example, if your child says, oh, I've got a problem with my maths project, then what you shouldn't be saying is, oh, well, when I was a kid, I used to have maths projects and I never had a problem, blah, 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 blah. And what you're doing here is you're not listening to what the child is saying. You're starting to talk about yourself. That's not effective listening either. Another thing that you need to do as an effective listener is also not only to have communication on the factual level about the details of what is being explained to you, but another important thing as far as effective listening goes is to identify the emotions and the feelings behind what your child is explaining to you. So, for instance, it's a good idea to ask questions like, how do you feel about that? You must feel very frustrated. Or do you feel angry? Or do you feel frightened? Are you worried? What emotions, what feelings is the child or the person explaining to you? Because again, if you can correctly identify what sort of emotion the other person is feeling, then they themselves will feel that you are identifying, you are understanding them much better and feel much more comfortable with the communication. And finally, the last ingredient of effective listening is about summarizing and paraphrasing. That while somebody is explaining to you what it is that they want to communicate, then you should be saying things like, so what you're saying is blah, blah, blah. And when you finish off, you summarize the conversation, explain what it is that you've understood, so that the listener can clearly understand that you have got their message and they feel comfortable with the communication. And if you can do this, if you can make this into a habit with your kids, then the communication and the relationship that you have with your kids for homeschooling or for anything will improve spectacularly. A friend of mine is trying to homeschool his teenage daughter. And as he freely admits, the communication between him and his daughter is not exactly the best. It has, shall we say, much room for improvement. And one of the reasons why the communication between the two of them is so bad is simply because most of the time he's either criticizing his daughter, trying to tell her what to do, explaining things, laying down the law, criticizing what she does. The conversations between the two of them are really not healthy at all. And this situation can be greatly improved. The communication between parents and children can be greatly improved when the parents, we actually make that effort to listen to our kids. I'm not saying that when you listen to your kids, you have to do everything that they're saying. I'm not necessarily saying that their point of view is correct. But what I am saying is that if you make the effort and take the time to sit down, look your kids in the eye, and listen to what they're saying with the intention of seeking to understand their ideas and what it is that they're talking about, then the relationships that you'll have with your child or with your children will improve. Once you've understood them correctly, then you can make the decision of what the best course of action is. And it may be that that course of action is exactly the same as the course of action that you would have taken anyway. But if the child feels that you've at least made the effort to sit down and to understand how they feel and their point of view, then that could make a big difference. And as far as homeschooling goes, having a healthy relationship with your children and understanding how they feel is an important step. So your homework for today is to think about how good a listener are you? How good are you at effective listening? And are there any other points that I've mentioned where there is room for improvement? Because if you can improve, then your relationship with your kids will improve, your homeschooling will improve, and that, again, is what being an effective learner is all about. So, wish you all the best of luck for this week. I hope that your homeschooling or that your home studying is going well, and I look forward to seeing you next week. My name is Ian Gibbs. Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.